Here we go. If it goes wrong again, I'm going to blame the solar storm, okay? So that's my excuse. Anything goes wrong, it's the solar storm. Good afternoon. Hi. Yeah, good. Back in the zone again. Welcome to the SharePoint Lifecycle Management with Project Server. My name's Ian White, and I am the technical lead for Microsoft Enterprise Project Management and Visio for Western Europe. Now, Microsoft being Microsoft, Western Europe is its own definition that doesn't match anybody else's definition of Western Europe because it doesn't include France, Germany or the UK. Although the UK is quite happy not being part of Western Europe. So I tend to look after the smaller countries, and so it starts here in Finland and it works its way down to Portugal, to Lisbon, or even the Canaries if I'm very lucky. So you can guess where I'd rather be in the winter. I love it here. I like the cold. And one of the great opportunities of the 12 countries that I look after is that I get to talk to lots of organisations, lots of partners, lots of customers, my colleagues, who often have different local problems, you know, different cultural issues, but some of the things are consistent across the board. And in my role as a sort of an evangelist for Project Server, you know, the great opportunity I have is to show how some of the things can be solved quite simply with some of the technology we've got, but we tend to think of, oh, it's got that boring already. So I was going to slip my wrist in the corner now. So, anyhow, that's the way it goes. No, wasn't the one I thought I was going to. I thought I was going to making cakes with SharePoint. Okay. So let's have a look at what this is. So let me explain to you the background for this presentation. Most of you will be familiar with TechNet. And on TechNet we have various pieces of help we try to give our customers and partners. And I discovered that we had a solution accelerator for this SharePoint Lifecycle Management. And what we've done is we've built a very simple workflow that is fully documented. There's a white paper and there's instructions of exactly how to do it. And for those of you who are interested, which is hopefully a few of you here, it's a great way not just to manage SharePoint Lifecycle Management, but to really any application lifecycle management. But also, it's about how you can start to become familiar with the Project Server technologies as well. So it has a dual opportunity. And I'll point you out as part of the presentation where you can find the links. So what I'm going to cover off is some of the challenges which were the business drivers for people thinking about putting this sort of application together. Then look at some of the variable options using SharePoint to do this. So I restarted my machine off, just crashed, and of course Skype has started because it's Microsoft Skype, so that's I'm going to show you the SharePoint Lifecycle Management environment. I've got it working on my Hyper-V at the moment, and then show you where you can get resources. And we'll probably not take a full hour to do this. Maybe, if there's any questions you ask. And by the way, questions are welcome at any time. Answers, they may be less frequent. Okay. This is sort of stating some of the obvious, but there are some things that are pretty easy to do with SharePoint. You know, there are the standard capabilities that people know and love, but the reality is there's a lot more that's there. You know, we tend to know about these things, and yes, we can do any of these things well or badly, but the reality is that most of them are fairly standard capabilities. One of the critical success factors, but also one of the areas of the most difficulty, is the fact that SharePoint really encourages the idea of self-service. People generate sites. The sites start to become like rabbits. You know, you can start off with one rabbit, start off with 2 rabbits, and then 2 rabbits quickly become 4 rabbits, that suddenly become 16 rabbits, and suddenly you're overwhelmed with rabbits. And that can happen very easily where you give people the ability to create sites and sub-sites within the system. And the question really is, can we take control over this? Because although we want to empower people, empowering people so that where it becomes anarchy isn't necessarily a good idea. So people sort of say, okay, well we've got a program, we've got some sort of initiative, or we've got something going on. Let's create a SharePoint site to do it. Let's create a SharePoint site because we can do stuff fairly easily on it. Good. You know, for Microsoft, great. We want to see our technology used. But from the other, from the old consultant in me, which is where I was before at Microsoft, control. We want to be able to reuse some of this knowledge that we created. We want to make sure that we can find stuff in a logical fashion. We want to make sure that our data is consistent, possibly. So where do we go? Well, typically, some stuff will always leave in the self-service. Well, we might not always, but on the whole we'll do. Typically, creating a sub-site, that's fine. Maybe creating some pages, do some stuff within the designer. Sort of easy to do. People will screw up, but hey, we can fix it fairly easily. Let's get on and let people do it. And these things tend to occupy minutes or hours of work of the user. There's not a lot involved in it. And that's fine. Let's let people do stuff like that. But when we get to things where we need something which is a bit more sophisticated, whether it's a site collection, whether it's putting on a feature, restoring deleted sites, how often does that happen? Installing some third-party add-on that somebody's found, oh, this is a really cool web part, we'd like to have that installed, please. This can really make a difference. These things tend to take us in IT more time. We may have to test them. We may have to put them through some sort of evaluation. We'll suddenly find, this is a great feature, the boss wants it, but unfortunately we need to put on the CU for November in order to do it, and we're currently still back in July because we haven't got around to do that, and we've got to upgrade 20 servers in our farm in order to do that, and then 5 other things will break if we apply the CU. So it's never quite as simple as it starts. It all looks like, hey, this is really easy, we'll just put this in. And suddenly it becomes really complicated. So things can take a lot more time. And then we move into that area where things get very much more complicated, where we're doing, we're moving from 2007 to 2010, or we're building some custom web parts, or we're building some critical business workflow inside of SharePoint. And you can't just sort of throw it together. It has to be properly planned. We've got to use the right tools. We've got to integrate with the right data sources. We may have to push out data. The security models are more sophisticated. These things can take a lot of time to do. On the face of it, often our users don't really understand why things that they can do which are really, really simple, and then other things which they still think should be simple are so much more complicated. But we need to have some sort of governance for all of this. So, production environments, or should I say non-production environments. One of the things that I do find somewhat depressing, I'm not easily depressed, I promise you, I do find something depressing, which is the amount of sites that put things into production without going through any form of staging environment whatsoever. And then they worry and they wonder why things start crashing. And you're saying, well, what's the testing? Well, where's your staging environment? Oh, we haven't got a staging environment. So how do you know anything's going to work? How do you know it's not going to have an adverse effect on the system? I was fortunate enough to present our project server technology to the International Atomic Energy Authority in Vienna. You've heard of them, they've been in the news recently with regard to certain goings on in Iran. But that was nothing to do with why I was interested. And I showed them the fact that we could capture these requests and start to manage their backlog. And they said, we want it, we're going to do it straight away. Because the things that we can't ever do is actually show to our users the projects that are being waiting to be delivered. And then we can't actually explain to people why we've chosen to deliver any of the projects at all. So the way that we optimize or we do portfolio management within our IT projects was something that was completely obscure to the users, who, as a result of which, just got frustrated. Oh, IT, they never do anything for us, they just put things off. We don't realise that there's any budget constraints or resource constraints or technology constraints. They don't understand that. Why should they? They're users, it's not their problem. But unless we can communicate well with people, they just end up getting frustrated with us. Which comes down to this objectively analysing and prioritising solutions. In a similar vein, in the commune of Stavanger, I was showing the IT department this, and they said, well, this is great because it allows the politicians to explain back to their it allows the managers in the organisation to explain to their politicians why we did particular projects, because these were the goals you set because of your political promises to your electorate, and therefore these are the projects that we did, these are the projects we didn't do because they didn't meet what your overall goals would be. Well, those sorts of discussions happen in organisations of all sorts. They're not just in governmental organisations. People just don't know why. But how do we forecast our resources? Yeah, I've got 50 projects in my backlog, but do I have the right people available to do them? I may have the budget, but if I don't have the resource, in terms of the individuals, then all the budget in the world isn't actually in the delivery of the project. So these are the sorts of things that we need to understand. Of course, once a project becomes approved, we need to manage it. Is it on time? Is it on budget? Are we slipping? Where are we slipping? What's the critical path? How do I bring it back on track? Is it healthy? And then, of course, at the end of the day, you want to close the loop. You want to see, did we actually achieve what we promised we would do? Have we saved costs of 5%? Have we improved our process throughput by 10%? Have we improved our customer satisfaction by 5 points? We want to try and measure it. So, typically, life cycles look like this. If it's self-service, I'm the manager in the department, you know me, I'm the manager, I'm an expert, I know about IT, I install Windows myself on my machine, I'm an expert. You come across these guys every day. Oh, what does this button do? Let's push it, let's see. Oh, shit. Anyhow. So, they're the ones who are going to go onto SharePoint and they're going to look at that site settings box and see what they can do. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not so good. But the reality is, they identify they've got a need, they then create an application. At the end of the day, the most basic SharePoint subsite is an application. They deploy it, i.e. they send the links out to their colleagues to say, hey, use this. And then, of course, theoretically, these guys go back to them and say, well, it doesn't quite do what we wanted it to do. But eventually, they are happy. We still need some sort of control. Those minor requests, I want to switch on Visio services, for example. Now we've got to say, well, what's the impact of that going to be? We need to do some sort of impact analysis. So we need to review the request. Then somebody needs to actually do it. And it's said it may be much more complicated than it looks on the face of it. And of course, then when things go wrong, somebody needs to support it. Easy to ask for, but in a live production environment, it could be much more complicated. It might put unexpected overhead on your servers, and suddenly your overall performance of your environment goes through the floor. Suddenly people want to have access to SQL data, which they haven't had previous access to. We've got to think about the security. And of course, more complex deployments require a full life cycle of control. Typically, I need a highly customized site. For example, I've got the budget, I want IT to go and get somebody to build it for me. Then we've got to see how that fits in with our overall deployment cycles, because we've got other things that we're doing with our servers. Then if we're happy about that, if we can actually fit it in, then we allow ourselves to manage that through to a deployment, and then we've got obviously an ongoing support. But the reality is, just because they've got budget doesn't mean to say that we've got capacity to deliver it around here. That may not be the case. We have some organizations where IT basically will simply say, give the standard answer to these questions. No. No. Can't have that. No. We haven't got resources to deal with it. No. Not a bit frustrating. We have to allow some things to go through. And when we choose which products, which enhancements to the SharePoint environment we're going to do, we should be looking at the business rationale. You know, why are we doing it? What are the reasons? Here are just some samples. These are by no means extensive. These are the sorts of questions we should be asking ourselves. Do our projects meet the sorts of requirements that we need to have in order to validate them as good projects to go forward? So, for example, do they help our product come to market that much faster? Are they a low-risk or a high-risk project? Do they improve our overall business productivity? These are the sorts of questions that we should be asking. Okay. Not only do we want to track, but we need to keep sorts of the related documentation associated with our applications. We want to ensure we know who is actually undertaking different tasks associated with it. We want to make sure we've got enough resource, that we're not overspending time on stuff, and that we can have a sort of at-a-view glance of our current projects. Yeah, how they're going. It's very rarely just a business requester and somebody in IT that's going to be involved. There are normally other people. It's the security administrators, the guys who look after the hardware. You know, you've got the SQL administrators. You've got other parts of the business that may have a related set of interests. It's very soon builds out to sort of a group of individuals, all of whom may have a small or major impact on what the impact of it, on what the change or the request may be that's going into the system. So what we've done is we've arbitrarily distilled these things into 5 phases. Allow the business to create requests. Make it as simple as possible so that they don't feel that they have to know every answer right at the outset. Allow projects then to go through some sort of selection process based upon their importance, their cost, whatever. Allow us to plan projects against the resource availability. Ensure once we've gone through those first steps, but once we go ahead, we can actually ensure we manage those projects effectively. And of course, the bit that nobody ever does, because as a rule, once we've finished it, we're pleased to run away from the project. But we should try and do some sort of assessment as to the effectiveness of what we actually did. So first of all, what can we do? Well, we can simply have a SharePoint list, some sort of library where people create requests and we pick them off. It's a very simple sort of process. And we can maybe do some statusing on those to move them through their various life cycles. It's fine, but it's very, very, very simple, and it's only list management. We could use the standalone project professional client. We can do it, but they are separated. They don't connect in any sort of way, but it will allow us to break down what's involved in putting all of these things together. We can synchronize that with SharePoint. This is the SharePoint Foundation, so that people within the team can see what the project manager is doing with the tasks, but it does have limitations, especially around governance. Or we can use Project Server 2010, and it allows us to capture the request, go through some sort of governance model, approve the ones we wish to approve, and then manage the others in the project client. And using the portfolio analysis, it allows us to evaluate and prioritize our projects. And of course, it gives us the sort of dashboarding that we want to have. Marketing slide now. You can say it's a marketing slide because it's confusing. But the reality is, Project Server. Any of you running Project Server in the room at the moment? You raise your hands. Search for the guilty parties. I can see 2. Is that it? There should be somebody else in here, at least one more, based on statistical chances. Anybody else running Project Server? Ooh. Well, if you were running Project Server, you would know that it's sort of a misnomer. It's really Project Service. It just plugs into SharePoint Enterprise. However, if we call it SharePoint Service, we couldn't be able to charge anything for it. So it has to be part of the platform. So it's called Project Server. I suspect that's not strictly true. It's my rationalization of it. So we actually plug Project Server into SharePoint Enterprise, and we add layers of functionality which are not there as standard, around the schedule management, around the resource management. And of course we take advantage of all the core functionality that's in the SharePoint Enterprise site. Integration, of course, with all your favorite tools and technologies. Okay. What is it? It's a no-code solution. What do we mean by that? Is that we have some white papers, or we have 2 white papers, which have all the instructions you need to set up what I'm going to show you. Additionally, we have a couple of WSPs, which give you some of the graphical front end and the workflow that you need for it. And these are pre-built, ready for you to plug in. It's a great way for those of you who want to know a bit more about Project Server and build a solution that's really useful to combine those 2 things together. So there's those 2 white papers. So we've got a white paper that talks about the issues behind SharePoint management and why you need to have it. And of course the technical paper, that's what I just described to you, describes the how-to, step by step. It's a great white paper. You can, if you wish to, download a sample data set, which will allow you to actually try it out in a safe environment. I always recommend trying things out in a safe environment first. So really, really useful. So it doesn't really, apart from needing a SharePoint Enterprise server, it's a great starting point. How do you use it? Well, you can either deploy it yourselves, or you can work with one of our partners for EPM, who can help you, guide you through what's involved. When's it available? Well, the answer is now. If you search for SharePoint Lifecycle Management and Enterprise Project Management, you will find that link. This is what it looks like. So, what you can see, that each step along the maturity of the project, so what we do is we gather requests at the front, They go through an initial gateway that expects some approvals, and once they're approved, they start to ask for more information, because at the beginning it's like, I need a new customized site. Okay, well once we've got through, yeah, okay, you do, let's look at what's involved in actually delivering that, so we add in additional content, and then this is all configurable as to capture the content that you want. Then we go through some sort of project selection phase that allows us to choose which projects we want to go ahead with. Once we've selected the projects we want to go with, then we go through the detailed plans to assign who's going to do it, and lastly, we're going to execute and then see how we've achieved it. And here we can see a little snapshot from the server of the steps that this has gone through, and the graphics and the logic are all part of the package that we pointed you at. Yeah, sure.
To me, looking at that slide, it seemed that it's more of a sort of a lifecycle management solution for any IT project, not just SharePoint. So what makes it so specific for SharePoint lifecycle management?
The white paper that goes with it. No, I mean, it's a glib answer, but it's the truth. They wrote the white paper specifically targeting SharePoint deployments. You're absolutely right. You could use it, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, it doesn't just have to be used for SharePoint. In fact, I wouldn't use it just for SharePoint, because you want all requests to come through this way, and you just classify them by the different sorts of requests coming through. But that would be something very easy to add here in this first step, as to I want to describe what sort of request it is. So let's switch across to the demo. So, for those of you who are interested, and even if you're not, I'm going to tell you. I'll just find the right, so there we go. What you're looking at is a server. This is actually running Windows 2008 R2 on my laptop. It's a twin SSD with 16 gigabytes of RAM. So why I was quite upset when it wasn't working before, you can imagine. And I'm running Hyper-V, and this is our demo environment running in the Hyper-V window, and this is live, happening right this minute here. What I'm going to do is just take you down to the server settings, and what we can see over here, this is where we configure this demo. It's fairly straightforward. We can define the phases that the project has, so we can look at a create phase. Back. We can look at the project detail pages associated with this. So if we look at, say, the strategic impact, I'm not sure I should go from there. Let's do this one. So this is where we define the strategic impact. If we look at various other settings, these are all defined in the document, wrong page, in the documentation associated with the particular web part. So let's look at it running.
So just one question. So now you're in the project server.
Yeah.
And that's the extension.
The project server is running on top of SharePoint, and like you have the settings in the control for SharePoint, we have our own area where we make specific project server settings, which is what you can see here. So these are a bunch of specific settings which are appropriate to the project server, over and above those which are applicable to the server center, the SharePoint. Okay, so if I go here to the project center, this is a very simplified version of the project center. We just have a number of projects sitting in here. If I create a new project, this has been created in a very simple way. We've created an enterprise project type called a SharePoint enhancement, and these fields are ones that you can configure as to what fields you want. So we'll call this Helsinki. Put some description in there. Now what's this going to do is that when this saves away, which it will do in a second, it's going to take the template, which is that SharePoint enhancement that you saw, and that template contains essentially three things. It contains the project plan as a project file, an MPP file. You've all probably used Microsoft Projects at some point in time. And it's going to create a schedule in the SQL database that's underneath the project server. It's going to create a SharePoint site for project documents associated with this project, and it's going to kick off the workflow, which we can see that we've got the workflow at the initial proposal stage. And this is a very simple workflow. It's only designed for simple workflows, but for this case it's normally satisfactory. So this project now is at the this phase. Just show that in. If I look at, for example, the let's look at the SharePoint web-based catalog system, we'll see that this one is at a more advanced stage. And let's have a look at what's in this one at this particular stage. This one's gone through a couple of approvals. And we can see that as we moved it on beyond the initial requirements, we started to capture more information associated with it. So we captured, in this case, some cost fields, some more technical description if there was one, a simple risk assessment, and we could have done some sort of category. In fact, we should have done some sort of category. Let's edit this. We can use lookup fields, and we'll say that's a search content. So these fields are all defined as, we call them enterprise custom fields, and these are standard fields in the project database. Very easy to set up. Doesn't require, I said, all in the guidance notes in that white paper. Now let's look at something that's really quite interesting, which is this one here, which is the strategic impact. And here we can see that this project has been scored against a whole bunch of drivers, which may be, in this case, the drivers of IT. We want to reduce cost. We want to improve our employee retention. Whatever. We can choose these, the ones we wish to have. It's actually very easy to set these things up. The difficult part is actually choosing what the metrics are you're going to measure. So actually understanding how you're going to measure these is really hard. But setting them up here is in this what we call this driver library, and here they all are. And if I look at one of these, productivity gains, here I can see where I've described it. I can see the fact that it's active, and here are those descriptions that I used. Very straightforward. As I said, the hardest thing is actually working out how you're going to measure the benefits. Of course, when I've scored all my projects, I need to understand let's not do that. What I've got to do is establish what the relative importance of these drivers are, because although I'm scoring all my IT projects coming in, all my SharePoint projects coming in against these criteria, I don't know how these criteria rate against each other. And we do that in a thing we call driver prioritization. And here, if I go through to the SharePoint ranking, I can see, for example, the relative importance of those drivers. Now, it may vary. The CIO may have a different view of these compared to the operations manager. So you may want to run different models in different scenarios to try and work out which way you want to do it. But we allow you to run multiple models. When I move forward, then we look at here the projects that we're going to think about. Here we see our projects that we brought through to sort of decide which ones we want to execute, and we can see that based upon their scoring and based upon the relative importance of the drivers, we've got different weightings for different projects. And then as I move forward into analyze cost, what I can see here is the cost of these projects, and I can say, well, I don't have the budget, maybe I only have say $500,000. I can recalculate that. Maybe if I do it without screwing up the numbers. Okay, let's try that. And what we're going to see now is that projects drop out from my chosen list because they don't meet our business requirements. They're not up in the high priority. And down here we see projects that have moved out. And what we're trying to do is always optimize on the value. But let's say I want to do this knowledge management system anyhow. And so I can force that in and then recalculate. And what we'll see is that one has been moved out to make way for the one that I've moved in. But having said that, that doesn't mean to say I can do these projects, because I said to you before, when I save this, we'll save this as model 1, and I move to look at my resource availability, I can actually see whether I have enough people to actually deliver the projects. In this case, unfortunately, I have, but I can actually look. Well, we don't actually have any roles associated with these projects, which is why they all come in. But if I did have roles associated with the projects, I would actually see how many developers I'm using, how many testers, how many technical writers associated with it. When I go back to the project center, what I'm going to do now, what we can see is I can list the project center in different ways. Actually, that's not much of a different way. Let's look at tracking. So for our tracking Gants, or we can look at them by the work effort involved. And of course, if I can take a project, let's say the project we had here, and I can go to the schedule, and now I can see the project plan in detail. And the thing that you can notice about this, and it's for the first time, but we now have the ability to modify the project inside of the web client, because this is a pure Ajax grid now, JavaScript. There's no ActiveX involved, and that means that if I want to take, say, this task here, which is now at 4 days, I want to make that 10 days, I can do that here without having to use the Microsoft Project Client. And what we'll see in a second is that's going to stretch. What's the catches up with me? He said, there we go. That's stretched. And what you'll notice that if we take a good example, let's take this one. Let's make this one go a bit longer. The gather project requirements. So we'll make that 20 days. Now, what we've done is we've changed that, but these haven't changed. Because if I make a change to the schedule every time I change data, because the scheduling engine, when we use the web client, is on the server, will kill the server. So what we do is allow people to make the changes and then recalculate. So then cause the calculation to happen, we see the reschedule, and then we see these grey fields or blue fields are all where all the changes have impacted on the project. Of course, I can open this if I want to in the Microsoft Project Client, and do more advanced resource management, more advanced reporting, but there's a whole load of additional capabilities in there that you may wish to use. So once you've done that, we'll just close that and check it in. Eventually. What that will do is update the high-level view of the project so that we've got a better view of the summary of the length it's going to take, because now we've affected the overview of the project, and we can start to report on it. Okay, so we'll just go back to the presentation. So, when you add in the project server into a SharePoint site, it's very easy to build some very simple governance and tracking applications that can control anything. In this particular case, the white paper and the tools that we're offering you are specifically to simple lifecycle management for projects. We can manage that backlog. We can choose which projects we're going to do using that portfolio analysis tool. So we can start to score our projects and decide which ones are going to be done, not just based upon finger in the air, but on some sort of objective metrics. Obviously, we've got the full project management tool set for resources, for cost analysis, for all those sorts of things, but how much of that you wish to use, that will vary from company to company. The white papers, as I said, describe what I did and will give you a starter, allow you to get into it very easily. It's very, very simple. You know, I'm not a developer. I'm an architect by inclination and training. It took me about half a day to get the thing working, mainly due to the fact that my typing errors were causing me the most amount of grief. So I thought I'd type something. I typed something completely different. But it was a great learning tool set. It gives you examples of how to set up those business drivers. It gives you that project plan that I showed you. That's a sample project plan that ships with it. And of course the lookup fields and the various other tables. And of course, simply in the demo set that comes, you can restore an active environment just by attaching the 5 databases that you can get with the solution starter. We use two particular WSPs, one for the workflow that you just saw, and this is the dynamic workflow, and then one for the visualization. I mean, you can create your own ones pretty easily if you're developers, but it's very, very straightforward. And on the back of this is a whole bunch of different links that will give you an introduction to the various aspects, not just of, obviously, most of you are fairly familiar with SharePoint, but on the project server aspects of SharePoint. Okay? I said 3/4 of an hour, and it's pretty well exactly 3/4 of an hour. Now the opportunity for any questions that anybody would like to ask. Or you can all rush off and get yourselves a cup of coffee, whichever you prefer. Any questions? So,
can you import existing projects from MPP files?
Can you import existing projects?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You don't have to use the template that we're using there. You can bring in your existing projects. And as somebody who really promotes this, my first rule of people who want to deploy a project server is bring in your existing projects. They may not be done in a consistent way, but the first thing it gives you is visibility. And that's the first step to taking control over anything. So visibility is great. Then you can start to get people to work in a consistent way. But I love it when we bring in existing projects that are working in a standalone mode and bring them into the project server. Any more questions? Okay. Well, in the great tradition of sessions at this time of the afternoon, the class is dismissed. Thank you very much.